Hello everyone and welcome in. I'm echohack. Today we're going to be talking about the Immortals. This Immortals guide is a long form guide, so this is a very long video as you can see. And of course this comes with the major caveat that the upcoming beta has not been released yet, so there's going to be new information that I and the other Maxroll team members are going to be updating as soon as we know anything new. Now of course, today we're going to be talking about the Immortals. This will serve as an overview of all of the Immortal activities and things that you can do in the game. So let's just get right into it. Now the Immortals is all about three things: fame, wealth, and power. The Immortals represent the most powerful players in Diablo Immortal. The ruler of all of the Immortals is known as the Immortal, and has the power to appoint 4 lieutenants, along with controlling the entire faction. If you're one of the lucky few to call yourself an Immortal, you gain access to the game's biggest challenges, best loot, and wealth beyond measure. But the Immortals cannot hold their crowns forever, and inevitably the shadows will take control of the crowns and become the new Immortals. How long can you hold on? And while you reign as Immortal, can you take advantage of your position to strengthen your character? This walkthrough is going to ensure that you can optimize your rewards during your limited time as an Immortal. Who knows, maybe one day you'll become the Immortal. Now, the TLDR here is that the Immortals is a faction that gives you the best loot and honor game in the entire game. You really want to be in the Immortals. It's highly, highly desirable. And what's really cool about the Immortals is that this gives something to Diablo players that we've wanted for a really long time, which is that PvEvP experience, but it also has some direct PvP elements. And we'll get into that in this discussion. Now, not everybody can be an Immortal. There's a limited number of seats available, and you can only directly join the Immortals via an invite from another Immortal. So the Immortals and the Immortal leadership are going to probably review your character. They're going to look at your character's stats, your character's gear. They want to probably know that you're going to be doing your daily quests, all of these things to make sure that you are really contributing to the Immortals. And if they don't think you're worthy of being an Immortal, you're not getting an invite. Now, there still is another way to become an Immortal, and that is joining the Shadows and becoming one of the top 10 Dark Houses and fighting the Immortals for their position of power. Now, if you join or you lead the top Dark House and you overthrow the reign of the Immortals, then you can become the new Immortals. And if you're the leader of that Dark House, you can become the Immortal. So the stakes are very, very high during what is called the cycle of strife. This whole cycle of the Shadows becoming the Immortals and the Immortals coming back to being adventurers over and over again. This is called the cycle of strife, right? Now, when you become an Immortal, this triggers a whole bunch of special events called Cycle's End. Cycle's End is this special time in between the reigns where there's a bit of a rest on the server, right? So there's been this conflict between the Shadows and the Immortals for a long time, maybe several months, and now there's this 1 week where everyone can just kind of take a breather, right? And it's actually really cool what happens. Westmarch gets all these crazy banners everywhere. It looks entirely different. There are daily rewards for Cycle's End. It's really just like this big party that gets thrown when the reign ends for the current Immortals. So you can see here I have a screenshot of the beginning of Cycle's End when we took over the Immortals. So after 2 weeks, the reign of Nazem has ended. Ascension, that's the name of our Dark House, has ascended. Ascension of the Shadows, under the leadership of Raxantarax, overthrew the Old Order. They will become the next Immortals. So Raxantarax, or Rax, he was the leader of our Dark House when we ascended to become the next Immortals. Now, again, there's as the Immortals and as being one of the Immortals, you really have this incentive to hold players accountable, hold other Immortals accountable, to maximize out their contributions to the Immortals. And those contributions come in the form of this currency called Essentia. So if you're a more casual player and you don't contribute to the Immortals, you're going to find yourself very quickly kicked out on the street. They're going to kick you out. You're going to become adventurers again, right? So in other words, joining the Immortals is a gameplay commitment. This isn't something that's for casuals. So you got to make sure that you're at least playing an hour a day, like at the minimum, and you really want to maximize your contributions. Now, we're going to get into min-maxing contributions a little bit later in the video here. That way you can, really min-max your equipment and all the other rewards that you get as an Immortal. But at a very minimum, make sure you're putting an hour or so in of gameplay a day, and you're doing the Immortals quests. One other thing to mention about Cycle's End is the very moment that you and your Dark House become the Immortals, right? So there's this special moment. The moment you become the Immortals, you get this amazing buff. And we don't actually have any recorded evidence of what the name of the buff is, but I'm calling it the Founders buff. So this buff goes to all of the founders of the Immortals. All of the people of the Dark House get this ridiculous buff. In the alpha, this buff was a stackable and shareable plus 50% magic find bonus within a 10-yard range, which means that if you have a 4-player party and you all stack up on each other, you can have a 200% magic find bonus on top of any other magic find that you had just right out of the gate. Now, I kind of expect this buff to change. I think they're going to tweak things a lot. It was kind of weird. It was very surprising. It lasts 4 hours immediately after you become the Immortals. So this was kind of a weird, surprising thing. When we became the Immortals, we didn't really expect this to happen. So I would expect this to change, and I'll let you all know what it changes to. But just be aware that if you become the Immortals, you should prepare yourself for this crazy buff, because what you need to do with this buff is you need to spend the next 4 hours just grinding as hard as you can to take advantage of the buff. Now let's talk about the true Immortal questline. So when you first join the Immortals, you actually don't have immediate access to all the powers that you'll have as an Immortal. So you have to unlock these a little bit. So you can only complete each step of this quest line one step at a time per day, and it's really important to stay on this quest line every single day, right? So you really want to complete the true Immortal quest line because it unlocks all of the daily goals and all of the things that you can do as an Immortal, which allow you to just completely skyrocket all of the rewards that you get as an Immortal. So it's really important that when you become an Immortal, whether you got an invite from somebody else or you actually went through the whole cycle of strife and you became the founders of a new reign, to never fall behind on the true Immortal quest line. Even falling behind one day can ruin your progression. So it's really critical that this becomes your #1 priority until the quest line is complete. All right, let's talk about daily goals. Now, daily goals are absolutely essential for you to complete as the Immortal. These are random quests that are given to you every single day. And they're kind of similar to bounties, but they should take a higher priority as they ultimately determine your standing within the Immortals. And sometimes bounties and the daily goals overlap. So you might get you might get a bounty to, let's say, go kill the Countess, and you might also get a daily goal to go complete the dungeon Countess, right? So if they do overlap, you can do both at the same time. So what you want to make sure you do is that you check both the daily goals and the bounty board before you kind of set out in the world. Like we said a little earlier, the Immortal Leadership is likely going to make it a hard requirement that you complete all of your daily goals every single day in order to maximize the progress of the Immortals, because these give you what's called dominance. You can see these values here with a little glowing orb. That's dominance. And the chests here also reward extra dominance as you complete more and more daily goals every single day. Inevitably, like, this is an MMO, and so inevitably there's going to be some days like you just can't play for whatever reason. You got to take your dog to the vet, like whatever it is, right? So when that does happen, we recommend that you communicate ahead of time with the Immortal Leadership. Say, hey, I'm going out of town. I definitely won't have cell phone service. Please don't kick me out of the Immortals. And I think a good Immortal leader will understand that. Just as long as you're communicating ahead of time and you're working with the leadership, then things are going to go swimmingly for you. Now, each of these daily goals, they're somewhat random, and I do expect these to change in the beta, but they give different amounts of dominance. So if for some reason your playtime is extremely limited for a particular day, try to finish the ones that are worth more dominance first. Some of these are like really easy to do, right? Like some of these are like inspect the Wall of Honor, for example, is one. And literally all you have to do for this is in Westmarch, you just go to the Wall of Honor, you click on it, and you close out of it and you're done. That's the quest. It's kind of a silly quest. And because of that, I'm kind of expecting them to remove it. It feels like it was kind of a placeholder quest for the alpha. All right, let's talk about the Immortal Rewards. Now, I know this is why you guys came here. So we're going to talk about all different aspects of the Immortal Rewards. There's crown abilities, there's the Eternal Crown, there's Commendations, there's Immortal Cloaks. And what's kind of cool about Diablo Immortal in general is that they have tutorials for everything in the game. But they do a very bad job of telling you like why things are important, right? So that's what this video is for. So let's go ahead and talk about these crown abilities, right? So these crown abilities are special crowns for the Immortal Leadership. So the Immortal Leadership receives a total of 5 crowns, and each one has a unique ability. So the Immortal gets to assign all of the lieutenants. So each lieutenant gets assigned a crown based on their title. The Eternal Crown is also particularly important because it provides buffs to every single Immortal. Now, all of these actually give the Immortal and each of the lieutenants a special buff, right? Like, you actually get a new icon next to your potion button on your screen that is not there for any other player in the entire game. So I'm just going to read these out to you because they're pretty cool. I kind of expected them to change these, but they're kind of cool. The Eternal Crown. The Eternal Crown grants all allies within 10 yards cooldown reduction and increased attack speed. I believe it starts out at 5% cooldown reduction and 5% increased attack speed. And as you level up the Eternal Crown, which we'll talk about in a second, that number goes up, right? There's the Crown of Agony, which is Shadowbreaker. So all allies within 10 yards get increased critical hit chance for 10 seconds. I think this is actually one of the best crown powers because crit chance is just super, super OP in any Diablo game. There's a Crown of the Wind, which is from the Pathfinder. All allies within 10 yards gain increased evasion rating for 10 seconds. This one is not that useful in my opinion. Maybe in PvP it will become useful in the beta, but at least in the alpha this was basically a useless. Crown of Protection, Hand of Iron. All allies within 10 yards take reduced damage for 10 seconds. This one can be really useful, especially for Heliquary bosses, for the Rite of Exile, for Kions, for all of these different raid things in PvE and even in PvP This is like super useful. And then finally, the Crown of Restoration. All allies within 10 yards heal for a certain percent of their maximum life every 5 seconds for 10 seconds. This one, probably not useful in PvP just because like the time to kill is so fast in Diablo Immortal. I can't imagine like a 5-second tick being that useful. But in PvE, when you're fighting like raid bosses, this is actually pretty cool. So if the bosses in Kions get like super hard, then this might actually be super useful, particularly for like melee and tanky classes to heal them up like by 1%. So that's all of the crown powers and sort of what all of their abilities do. And chances are good that you're not going to have one of these crowns, but you'll at least know what they do when the lieutenants or the immortal is using them. Right? Okay, of course, the most important crown is the Eternal Crown, which is the Immortals crown. This crown is core to the Immortals because it allows you to progress and add buffs to the entire Immortals faction. So in stark contrast to the Shadows, the Immortals are really tied together. They're all bunched together as a group. So in the Shadows, you're sort of progressing yourself by earning marks, doing Path of Blood, doing all these sort of kind of individual activities. There are some group activities in there, but it's more of like a person. It's very personal. Whereas in the Immortals, it's all group based. It's 100% group based. So the way you progress the Eternal Crown is that you gain dominance. And you gain dominance by doing daily immortal quests, contributing raw essentia, conquering Kion's Ordeal, and winning the Rite of Exile. And I think there's a couple other ways to get dominance, but those are the main ones. Leveling up the Eternal Crown as fast as possible is really important to stay ahead of the Shadows. And the main reason for this is because the Shadows are also rapidly progressing their own objectives, right? So they're also earning these damage and defense bonuses, so you got to stay ahead of them to stay equal with them, really. Now, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you can unlock. As you can see in the screenshot here that I have, leveling up the Eternal Crown actually allows you to have more members in the Immortals, which is huge, because more members means you can now gain more and more dominance, which allows you to get more and more bonuses. Now, every single rank of the Eternal Crown, you get 2% more damage and defense, but you also get some more stuff. You get new levels of the cloaks, you get new ranks of Kion's Ordeal, you unlock a statue for the Immortal, you unlock new stuff that you can buy at the Honor Merchant, and a few other like minor things in there as well. Now, the biggest rewards for the Immortals is the Commendations. Now, draw your attention to the panel on the far right side here, right? So this screenshot here, this is actually the main screen, the main Immortals screen that gives you like all of the status of like how much dominance you have, where the Immortals are, where they are in their reign, and so on and so forth. But the most important thing here is sort of your personal status on your Commendations, which is this little like banner on the right side that says, Tacos, week 3 of reign, right? So it gives you your weekly status, your weekly reward, your prestige, and your weekly ranking. Now, Commendations are these weekly rewards that are based on the prestige rank and your requested items from the vault. So there's an NPC called the Commendations Officer that distributes these rewards each week on Monday, starting at 3 a.m. server time. So so how you get all of these rewards is you earn contribution points. Now, contribution points allow you to increase your prestige rank, and they also provide you a competitive ranking system within the Immortals for the purposes of distributing loot from the vault. We'll get to that in a bit. Your prestige rank, however, it increases the commendations you receive every single week outside of the vault, right? So you get extra gold and extra honor just baseline from having more and more prestige, right? So this is something that you can kind of rank up on your own personally that isn't necessarily tied to the progress of the rest of the Immortals. The main Immortals menu has this summary of prestige rank and your overall contribution points rank for determining the vault rewards. So keep a close eye on this summary if you're vying for the top spot, because that weekly ranking, you want that number as low as possible, right? So you really want to be, if you want the best loot in the vault, you want to be weekly ranking 1, right? All right, let's talk about Immortal Cloaks. Now, all Immortals receive a cloak for the duration of the reign. Now, this is purely a cosmetic feature with no additional benefits other than styling on your friends who aren't part of it. As the Immortal Age is ranked up, the Immortal Leadership receives better and better cloaks that look more and more impressive over time. The Immortal eventually receives the most impressive cloak of all. All right, now let's get into the really juicy rewards, the Vault. Now, the Vault is its own reward system outside of Commendations that we just talked about. So some of the best loot in the game is available in the Immortals Vault. The Vault can even drop triple stat legendaries, which are unavailable from nearly anywhere else in the game, and they give you a significant boost in ORDR. So as an Immortal, you have a chance of receiving this loot, and if you're the top contributor, you can receive first pick. So in addition to contributions that you get from the vault, it's your job to defend the vault from raids by the shadows. And if you successfully defend the vault, that gives you some precious honor as well. Now, the way vault rewards get distributed is through this contribution point system. And this system is very, very complicated. For folks who are familiar with other MMOs, the best way to think about contribution points is sort of like as a DKP system or an EPGB kind of system. And essentially what it does is it tracks all of your contributions to the Immortals via points, right? So you get a score for each of your contributions. As you can see here in the screenshot, you get different amounts from different things that you do, including the daily goals, vault defense, inviting people to the Immortals, and just actually contributing raw essentia as well. Now, there's actually a theoretical maximum number of contribution points each week. Like, each of these categories has a cap. So if you want the best loot from the vault, you need to maximize your contributions every single day. We don't have the hard numbers on what those contribution points are, and I kind of expect those to change anyway in the beta. So we'll give you guys an update when we have those like hard numbers. One of the things you should know about contribution points, though, is that first week that you're an Immortal, those contribution points are going to be really limited because you haven't unlocked everything with the true Immortal Questline. And this is why I was saying earlier that true Immortal Questline is really important to stay on top of and do every single day, because it limits your ability to really get those contribution points in and really get high up on the ranking. So during the alpha, for example, the first week had a contribution point limit of 1,780 points. That was the absolute maximum you could possibly have, right? There's also something else that you should know here. So you see here in the screenshot, it says weekly ranking 1, right? But it's possible that 2 people could have 740 contribution points, right? So who is actually rank 1, who's rank 2 if you have a tie, right? So the way to figure that out is first to achieve the highest points wins the tie, right? So at the end of the week, which is Monday at 3 a.m., if there's a tie for contribution points, then the person who reached the maximum number of contribution points first is considered rank 1. So kind of how that works is on Saturday evening, Sunday morning at 3 a.m., you would get a refresh. The server would refresh all of your daily goals. And it would be a race then for all of the top players at 3 a.m. on Sunday to go and finish all of their daily goals first. And you might be somehow like otherwise capped before that, but That's probably like, if for determining like the very top spot, that's probably how it's going to happen, right? So if you're the first person, let's say at like 3:20 a.m., you finish all of your daily goals and you've capped everything else out for the week, and you were the first person to do that, then you're guaranteed rank 1. At least this is how it worked in the alpha. Again, all this stuff might change in the upcoming beta. Now, one really important point that was pretty confusing to us in the alpha was that requesting loot from the vault is something that's actually required, right? Like you don't just get like the best loot automatically. You have to go in the vault, you have to look for the item you want, and you have to hit the button. As you can see on the screenshot here, you have to hit the button request loot, and it will mark that as your first choice. You get up to 3 choices, and we'll kind of go into the 3 different choices that you can get in a bit. That system is a bit complicated, but anyway, before the loot's distributed, you need to view all of the available items and request the ones that you want, right? So you can request up to these 3 items, and the items are in ranked choice order. So this is where it gets complex. So in other words, your first choice will be given to you if you are the highest bidder on the item. Otherwise, it will go to your second choice, and so on, right? So you only receive 1 item as a result of your ranked choices, right? You can go back and you can cancel your request and request a different item anytime you want. So it's not like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. You don't have to give your final answer and then you can't unlock it, right? Like you can change your request anytime you want. And at the end of the week, if you are the player with the highest amount of contribution points for a particular item that you requested, you receive that item during loot distribution. So make sure you take time to review and request the loot that you want, because this loot can be some of the best in the entire game. It's really important to note here, though, if you forget to request specific loot from the vault, you get random garbage tier unclaimed loot. So always remember to request your 3 items from the vault. And one other thing that really helps you kind of sift through all the items in the vault, because there's like 200 plus sometimes items in the vault, is there's a little cog in the bottom right of the vault menu, and there's it's a little cog settings button. And what this button lets you do is it allows you to filter the loot that you see in the vault. So you can filter out all the yellow items, you can filter out all of the like off-class loot and things that you don't care for. Now, let's talk a little bit about distribution optimization. So this is where, let's say you are like the top contributor or one of the top contributors. Like your weekly rank is 1, 2, or 3, or you're pretty high up there, right? So if you actually collaborate with the other top contributors, you can predetermine who gets what loot. And it's a little bit complex. So what I want to do for you guys is dive into a very specific example, because the loot distribution can get really confusing, right? So let's say the top 3 Demon Hunter contributors are looking to predetermine who gets which loot, right? So it's Sunday night, everybody's on Discord, you're all talking to each other, and all 3 have completed the maximum amount of contribution points for the week, right? So there's 3 folks. There's Echohack, there's Facefoot, and there's Raxantarax. And those are ranked 1, 2, and 3 respectively, right? So these 3 players are looking at 3 different items in the vault, right? There's a main hand which is triple stat, all with 100 stats. There's a chest that's triple stat that has all 390 stats, and there's a helm that is triple stat with all 380 stats, right? So very clearly the main hand is the most desirable piece of loot, the chest is the next most desirable piece of loot, and the helm is the last most desirable piece of loot. So the fair and the correct thing to do is to give the main hand to rank 1, to give the chest to rank 2, and to give the helm to rank 3. So how can we ensure that happens? So the way you do this is Echohack would go and request the main hand as their number 1 choice, right? And then Facefoot would go and request the chest as their number 1 choice. and Rexantrax would go and make the helm their number 1 choice. And that way, when the loot gets distributed, it will look at the highest value for those for who bid on the item, essentially, right? Now, remember, even though you have 3 choices, you only receive 1 item out of these 3 choices, right? So that's kind of what I mean when I say that it's ranked choice. And again, this is like all stuff from the alpha. This might all change. I found it very confusing, but this is how it works. We tested this out. Now, there is one thing that you should know that you can do that's like super bad manner, is that you can actually request loot that is completely off class for you. And requesting off loot for you that's off class is automatic vendor trash. There's no benefit to like getting somebody else's class's loot, right? I hope they fix this in the beta, but if they didn't fix this, don't ever do this. This is super, super bad manner, and you'll lose out on the loot that you would have gotten for that week. And then also, if this happens and people notice, especially the Immortal leadership, they might just kick you out of the Immortals for the bad manner, right? This is like something you really want to avoid, right? So don't request off-class loot, super bad. All right, let's talk about defending the vault. Now, this is a big part of the vault, is you have this sort of entryway on the left side of the Hall of Ascension, and this is the entrance to the vault. Now, the vault is open from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. server time, so you don't have to like camp it 24/7, right? Only 12 hours a day. And what this feature of the game does is it allows the shadows to actually sneak into your vault and raid it to steal your valuable treasures, right? To steal your loot, to steal your essentia. So what happens is, while the shadows are in the vault, eventually they're going to get detected. The alarm is going to go off, and all of the Immortals are going to get an in-game notification telling you that the vault is under attack, right? So when you defend the vault, you go in and you can kill the shadows. So every shadow you kill, you get 30 honor per player killed, up to a maximum of 700 honor per week. And since honor is such a limited currency, you want to make sure that you're defending the vault and you reach your 700 maximum every single week. Now, once you reach 700 honor, make sure that you back off from defending the vault. Unless there's literally nobody else there, let other people defend the vault so they can also max out their honor for the week. Now, in practice, to properly defend the vault, you actually want to be camping the entrance, right? So you want to be partied up, you want to be waiting in-game next to the vault entrance, and the moment you get that notification, you want to pop in and you want to just mow down the shadows as fast as possible. All right, let's talk about Kion's Ordeal. Kion's Ordeal is the exclusive raid that the Immortals get access to. It's a 48-player sort of like mini raid. It's not quite comparable to like a full World of Warcraft raid. It's a little bit different. It's more like a little mini raid. Like that's a raid in a box, so to speak, right? There's one fight right now against 4 bosses simultaneously, right? So one thing that's really cool about Kion's is that you can actually do more and more difficult versions of it as you rank up the Eternal Crown. So the first version of Kion's is going to be really, really easy, and it's going to get more and more difficult as you rank it up. It's also going to be more and more expensive. So as you can see in the screenshot here, it costs 30,000 Essentia just to open difficulty 1, and then it gets more and more expensive to open up higher difficulties. Now, Kion's is super desirable to do because just like the Vault, it can give you some of the best loot in the game, those triple stat legendaries, right? When Kion's is opened, either by the Immortal or one of the lieutenants, not just anybody can enter Kion's Ordeal, right? You have to be an elite or a lieutenant or the Immortal to enter it at all. So since there's only 48 elite slots in the Immortals, essentially if you're an elite, that's a raid slot. So this is kind of how the Immortal leadership can divvy up all of the different raid slots for entering Kion's Ordeal. Now, as the Immortal, managing these raid slots is a major headache. So anything that you can do to be on time to Kions, to make sure you're there, getting other players to be there on time or ahead of time is super, super, super helpful, because what you don't want to do as the Immortal or one of the lieutenants is like be juggling around like who is an elite and who's not, just so people can just get in, right? It's a major headache. So if you can help, you should help as much as possible, but just by being early. So when you enter Kion's Ordeal, your group enters this large room with 4 different portals, and each portal goes to a different tormentor, allowing up to 12 players to fight them at a time. So what you do is you organize 3 parties of 4 per tormentor, right? So you have 12 people in front of a portal, get 3 parties in front of each portal if you're maxing out at 48 players. Buff up all of your parties, and then get ready for combat. And then the Immortal will actually be the one to initiate the combat, right? Now, one thing that's really important, and this is more of a note for the Immortal and the Lieutenants, is that the most important reward for the Immortals coming out of Kion's is actually the dominance that you get as a reward. Now, of course, you're going to get loot and gold and honor and all these other things. But dominance is the most important thing that you care about. So what you want to do is you actually want to maximize the amount of essentia that you spend for the dominance that you gain. And so we can do a bit of math, and we can call this ratio the dominance over essentia ratio, or the DE ratio. And we don't know the exact values for this. In fact, I'm 100% sure that they'll change in the beta. So even if we had all of the values ready, they undoubtedly would change. But this is something you want to keep an eye on, right? So like when you open Kion's Ordeal, make sure you write down the amount of essentia that you spent, and when you finish it, write down the amount of total dominance that you gained, to sort of track these values, because this is a very important value to track. Now, Kion's has 4 bosses: Veracity, Moloch, Siegebreaker, and Zolthrax. Now, in the alpha, Kion's was severely undertuned, right? Like, it was super, super easy. I believe we did like rank 5 with like 18 players, and it was a cakewalk, right? So I expect during the beta they're going to make this a lot harder, and the actual strategy for killing these bosses is going to get a lot more interesting than it was during the alpha. In the alpha, we just kind of zerged them down all simultaneously, right? We had different groups all killing different ones, and it just worked out, right? So the main thing, though, is that when you kill one of the tormentors, they empower all the other tormentors. So if you, like, for example, a really bad situation to be in is to have 3 tormentors dead and to have the last one at like 50% health, because that tormentor is just going to start wrecking everything, right? He's going to harden rage, and there's going to be no way for you to recover from that situation. So what you want to do is you want to communicate with everybody else. You probably want to be in Discord together, and you want to DPS down each of the bosses as closely as possible. And you can actually see the HP for each boss off on your screen as you're killing them. So if your group is killing the boss too fast, and the other groups need to catch up, just stop DPSing the boss and try to heal up and, dodge their attacks and all that kind of thing while you're waiting for the other groups to catch up in DPS. All right, now the most fun part is loot distribution. And Diablo Immortal actually does this in a really cool way. I really like how loot distribution works for Kion's, right? So after you complete the raid, after you kill all the bosses, you return to the main room that you started in, and you have, I think it's 15 players that touch the crystal in the middle, and that begins the loot distribution process. So what happens is that you get these circles on the ground, as you can see here. You get this circle, and you can actually inspect the equipment in the circle. So you can go and you can see like what items that you can roll for. And you can only pick one of these items. Now, sometimes you can roll for, sometimes there's like 4 or 5 items that you can roll for. You can only pick one of those, right? And essentially by standing in the circle, you're rolling need on that item. So there's no way to roll greed. It's either you can roll need, or you can just stand in none of the circles and you can not roll on them at all, right? Just in case, like, let's say you have better loot for everything and you want to make sure that somebody else can get an upgrade, then you can just actually just stand out of that round of loot distribution. So the timer is going to tick down, and when the timer reaches 0, you see all of the rolls for the item that you were rolling for and who won the item. So this is kind of a really cool way of doing it. There's a lot of these like really hype moments of like, oh, I rolled 98 and the other person rolled 99, and like there's these cool like nail biting roll offs that happen between different players. That's really enjoyable. All right, now let's talk about the Immortal. Now, the Immortal is the leader of all of the Immortals and has a tremendous amount of power and responsibility in the game. So being the Immortal is a bit like being the president of Diablo Immortal, if you will. It kind of bears the same weight of responsibility, or the same sort of things that you have to do as leading any large guild in an MMO, like a top guild in an MMO, right? There's additional pressure and harassment that's going to come from other players, both in the shadows and adventurers, who they're, people either trolling you, or they're jealous, or they want to take your spot, or they just want to spoil your reign because whatever, right? So you kind of need thick skin, right? And you need an ability to ignore the trolls at a minimum. You also need the ability to establish clear communication with the rest of the Immortals. This is more important than any sort of like mechanical gameplay thing. So you need to be able to set raid times, set membership policies, and you need to be able to create an environment that all players can have fun and ensure that there's a sort of like healthy rivalry between the Shadows and the Mortals that is friendly and respectful for everybody, right? So be mindful that as the Immortal, your behavior kind of sets the tone for the entire server for the duration of your reign. Now, as the Immortal, you actually get to name the reign that you have. So you can see here that we've named the reign tacos, right? So when you first establish your reign at the Historian, you need to give a name to this reign. So this name is visible on the Wall of Honor, and it's also visible in the main Immortals menu. So it should go without saying, but make sure that this is sort of like a fun name, and it's not toxic or hate speech or any of that kind of stuff, because it's highly visible on the server. And undoubtedly, if you do some shenanigans, Blizzard's definitely gonna ban you, right? Like they're gonna bring the ban hammer down. Now, a little bit later on, I think it's Bronze 4. You actually unlock a statue of yourself in Westmarch. So you'll actually ride by or walk by the statue of the Immortal, and it's this giant statue, and it's present near the honor merchant. It doesn't really do anything, but it's just like, wow, here's a giant statue of my character just sitting in Westmarch that everybody has to look at now. So as the Immortal, you're the only person who can change the strategy by which the Immortals accrue dominance and essentia. So each strategy has certain advantages. In my opinion, the optimal strategy is to concentrate power until you use the maximum rank of the Eternal Crown, but you might not actually be able to do that because the Shadows are going to come raid the vaults, and you're going to have to defend all of the loot that's in the vault. So concentrate power, definitely stick on this one as long as you can, but then consider bolster the vault if it becomes important. But before you make any decisions about which of these 3 strategies you want to use, bring together your chosen 4 lieutenants and discuss. It's really important to make sure that, as the Immortal, that you keep your team sort of close together in terms of making these like really big decisions. Now, Concentrate Power focuses on gaining dominance quickly. What it does is it increases all dominance gained by 1.2 times, right? So you get like roughly 20% more dominance for everything that you would give you dominance gain. It's really, really good. Bolster the Vault. Now, in theory, what this does is it makes it harder for the Shadows to raid the Vault. That would reduce the amount of Essentia lost when the Shadows do a raid. And it might also alert the Immortals a lot faster when the Shadows kind of mess up in the Vault. However, in the alpha, the strategy was really bad. It didn't really work correctly, and it pretty much didn't do anything. So we're going to have to test this out in the beta, see what changes. We think that this strategy is probably going to change to be a lot better. Now, finally, there's Reward Loyalty, and what this does is it increases all the weekly rewards for the Immortals. And the only time, at least to me, that this strategy makes sense is if you have a good understanding that your reign is coming to an end, right? Like the Shadows are like in Reckoning 5, and they're just gonna destroy you in the next Rite of Exile, and you stand no chance, right? So this is a sound strategy if you think you only have 1 or 2 weeks left in the reign, and that's going to allow you to sort of maximize those rewards before you get kicked out of the Immortals. Now, one other thing, actually near the statue of the Immortal is this thing called the Wall of Honor, and the Wall of Honor is really cool. So this is a permanent fixture in Westmarch, and it shows the Immortal and the 4 lieutenants for the current reign, and it also shows the founders of the current reign. So there's a button in the bottom right-hand corner there that you can click, and you can see all of the original founders of the current reign. Now, what's really, really super cool about this is that your reign is forever on the Wall of Honor. So if you become the Immortal, or you become one of the lieutenants, or you join the Immortals for a particular reign, or you're one of the founders, it's there forever. So there's right here, there's a little back button, so you can go and you can see the previous reign, how long it lasted, how much dominance they earned, all that kind of stuff. And then at the bottom, there's this button called the Chronicle. And what the Chronicle does is it will show you a list of all of the events for the entire history of the server of when everything happened, right? So like this is you kind of have this like in World of Warcraft, right? But it's all like scattered on like some wiki and some dark corner of the internet, right? What's really cool about Immortal is like all this information is right there on the server. It's super, super official. So, you know, years down the road, like let's say a couple of years go by, you can say, hey, I was there. I was reign number 3. I was reign number 3 on the server. That was some great times. And you really have like this like feeling of nostalgia. You were there. You were there at that time, that like amazing time, and you can talk about that, and you can go and reference it, and you can even see it as part of the permanent history of the server. It's so cool. Now, as the Immortal, communication's really key. So in the main Immortals menu, you can set the Immortal Status to whatever message that you want. So we really recommend setting this to include things like the timing of events, like Rite of Exile, Kion's Ordeal, and you might even want to put a link to your Discord in this message. And the really like 5-head way of doing this is to keep a like copy pasta of all of the different texts you have to put in here in some other notes app on your phone. And then that way you can easily copy and paste messages out here into the status whenever you need them. Now, one of the management tasks you have to do as the Immortal or one of the 4 lieutenants is that you have to approve or decline applications to the Immortals. So any Immortal can actually invite any adventurer to the Immortals, but only Immortals and the lieutenants can actually directly approve any of those invites, right? So I think this process kind of exists so you can go and you can interview the player, you can understand what their gear is, you can inspect their character, you can see what their legendary gems are, and see if they're like worthy of being an Immortal, right? Now, in the alpha, the application review process, which you can see here. It's just a little thing that says new membership application. You just tap on that. This is really bad, right? So it just gave you a check mark or an X with no ability to inspect the character or anything else. So I hope they have like updated this in the beta. But what I would recommend is, if you're the Immortal or the Lieutenants, is to set up a lightweight interview process, so that someone can join your Discord, that you can talk to them over voice, and like meet them in Westmarch, inspect their character, get to know the person, get to know the player, not just like, oh, well, you have just this much gear or whatever, because that communication is going to come really in handy in the future. For example, like if you want players for Kion's Ordeal, now you have already sort of set up this communication channel where they know how to use Discord, that that they're available, and that sort of thing. Thank you so much for watching, and if you made it this far in the video, consider liking and subscribing the video. We also have the written guide down below in the description of the video. Tell me what you thought was good about the guide, what was bad, and of course, we'll be improving this guide over time before Diablo Immortal release. Anyway, I'm echohack, and I'll see you next time. Peace!